Sure, here's an expanded, fast-paced, emotionally rich version of Part 1. It's written in a single flowing narrative. Fully safe for YouTube monetization. Simple English. And around 1,000 words, Emma's heart was beating faster than usual as she arranged the last few flowers in a small vase on the kitchen counter. She tried to calm herself, but the nerves wouldn't let her. Today, Alex was coming over. It's just Alex, her old friend, someone she had known for years. Just tea. Nothing else. She reminded herself of that over and over. But as she smoothed out the tablecloth and glanced at the clock, a strange sense of anticipation tingled in her chest. It had been months since they last met, and something unspoken always lingered between them. Something warm, something that made her pulse quicken, even though she was married. The knock on the door startled her. Her hands trembled as she wiped them on her apron. "Coming," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. Alex stepped in, carrying his usual calm smile, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. "Hey, Emma," he said, dropping his bag by the door. "It's been too long." Emma smiled, feeling her heart lift just a little. "I know." "Too long," she replied, leading him to the kitchen. They hugged briefly, just a friendly gesture. But Emma felt the lingering warmth of it, the way his hand brushed hers a fraction too long. She quickly stepped back, forcing herself to focus on making tea, her mind racing with emotions she hadn't fully acknowledged. Just as she poured hot water into the teapot, the sound of the front door opening made her freeze. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't Alex entering the room, it was Ryan, her husband. He wasn't supposed to be home for another hour. Emma's pulse spiked, and for a moment all she could do was stare at him, hoping he wouldn't notice anything unusual. "Hey, love," Ryan said casually, stepping in with his keys in hand, a light smile on his face. He looked tired from work, but there was something in his eyes, a calm curiosity that made Emma's chest tighten. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Alex turned toward the sound, eyebrows raised. Hi, Ryan," he managed, awkwardly. Emma's face flushed instantly. She could feel the heat rising to her cheeks as she tried to smooth over the situation. "Ryan, you're home early," she said, forcing cheer into her voice. "Just tea. Alex and I were catching up." Ryan's gaze shifted between them, lingering longer than expected. Emma's heart sank. She had expected anger, suspicion, maybe even a raised voice, but Ryan just tilted his head slightly and smiled. Not a sarcastic smile, not a questioning one, but something that hinted at understanding or at least intrigue. Emma's thoughts raced. "Oh no, this is bad. He must think." But Ryan didn't move closer aggressively, didn't raise his voice, didn't show the anger she had feared for months. Instead, he leaned casually against the doorway, watching them, his hands in his pockets, a soft, almost gentle smile on his lips. Alex, sensing the tension, shifted awkwardly. "I didn't realize you'd be back so soon," he said, trying to break the silence, but his words only made it more noticeable how thick the air had become. Emma felt trapped between relief and panic. Ryan's presence had always brought her comfort, but now it was different. Now it carried a quiet intensity that made her heart race. Ryan's eyes softened as they landed on Emma. "Looks like you to have a lot to talk about," he said calmly, almost thoughtfully. Emma's stomach twisted. The words were neutral, yet something in the way he said them made her think he wasn't upset. He wasn't angry. He seemed curious. "Ryan, it's nothing like that," Emma stammered, shaking her head quickly. "Just tea, really, that's all." Her voice sounded small, but she tried to steady it, hoping he would believe her. Ryan raised an eyebrow, but didn't reply immediately. Instead, he studied them quietly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. There was no anger, no suspicion, just presence. He seemed to sense the unspoken connection between Emma and Alex without any judgment, without any need to confront it. And that made Emma's heart pound even harder. "Complicated, Ryan." said finally, almost to himself, a soft murmur that made Emma stop in her tracks. She glanced at him, confused and nervous, and Alex did the same. Ryan's gaze was thoughtful, almost pensive. "It's complicated, isn't it?" he repeated, this time louder, addressing both of them. Emma's mind spun, as Kia imagined. This moment countless times, each scenario ending with anger, arguments, maybe tears. But Ryan was calm. He wasn't upset. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't storming out. Instead, he was watching them with an intensity that made Emma feel both exposed and strangely safe. Alex swallowed, unsure how to respond. I, I guess it's complicated," he admitted, a nervous laugh escaping him. Emma's fingers twisted in the fabric of her apron, a mix of relief and fear coursing through her. Ryan stepped further into the kitchen, closing the distance between them just enough to make the moment intimate but not threatening. "I trust you both," he said quietly, "and maybe, instead of fighting it, we figure this out together." Emma's eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her husband, the man she had been with for years, the man she loved deeply, wasn't angry. He wasn't jealous. He wasn't upset. He was open. He was offering understanding, a chance to navigate something that she had feared would destroy everything. For a moment, the three of them stood in silence. The air was thick, but not with tension. It was charged, with possibility, with unspoken emotions, and the quiet pull of curiosity. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine, a mix of fear and excitement that left her heart pounding in her chest. Ryan's gaze softened even more, his eyes locking with hers. "Whatever this is," he said softly, "we'll handle it together." Emma's throat felt tight, her chest swelling with emotion. She had expected confrontation, anger, maybe even heartbreak. Instead, she found herself staring at the man she loved, realizing that perhaps the heart could stretch further than she ever imagined, that love could grow in ways she hadn't thought possible. As Ryan leaned back slightly, giving them space, Emma took a deep breath. She glanced at Alex, who was still looking between her and Ryan with a mix of awe and relief. She realized that this afternoon would be remembered not for scandal or conflict, but for the unexpected honesty, the surprising openness, and the quiet promise that love could take many forms. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt a flicker of hope. A new chapter was quietly beginning, one she had never anticipated. One that would change everything, but perhaps for the better. The moment hung between them, a silent understanding, forming in the warm afternoon light, and Emma knew that nothing would ever feel the same again. If you want, I can now expand part 2 in the same fast-paced, emotionally intense style, keeping the story safe, romantic, and dramatic for YouTube. Do you want me to do that next? Here's an expanded, fast-paced, emotionally rich version of part 2, written in a single flowing narrative. Fully safe for YouTube monetization, simple English. Around 1,000 words, the tension in the room didn't break, but it changed. Emma could feel it. A subtle shift from fear to curiosity, from panic to a strange anticipation. Ryan leaned casually against the kitchen counter, his eyes never leaving her. But there was no judgment. There only a calm, almost playful understanding. Emma's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. She had expected arguments, raised voices, maybe even tears. But none of that came. Instead, Ryan's calm presence made the moment feel heavier and lighter at the same time. Alex fidgeted, glancing between Emma and Ryan, unsure how to act. I didn't expect you home so soon," he said nervously. His voice was tentative, careful, like he was stepping on eggshells. Emma could hear the unspoken questions hanging in the air, and she felt her chest tighten. She wanted to reassure Alex, to calm him, but she also couldn't tear her eyes away from Ryan, who was watching with that calm intensity. Ryan finally spoke, his voice low but steady, carrying the weight of someone who had been thinking long and hard before he said a word. "Looks like you two have a history," he said, his tone soft but firm, as if acknowledging something without making it uncomfortable. Emma's stomach flipped. History wasn't exactly the word she would have chosen. Their connection had been subtle, quiet. Something neither had admitted to aloud until now. It's nothing like that. Emma rushed to explain, shaking her head quickly. Her voice wavered, betraying the truth she was trying to hide. She could feel warmth creeping to her cheeks, the kind that made her feel exposed yet alive. Alex looked equally uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. Ryan's eyes softened, and he gave a small, knowing smile. "I can feel it," he said simply. "Whatever this is. It's real, isn't it?" Emma froze. Real. The word hung in the air, heavier than any accusation, warmer than any confrontation. She wanted to deny it, to push it away, but deep down she knew it was true. There was something real here, something undeniable. And Ryan, of all people, seemed to sense it without anger or fear. Alex cleared his throat, glancing between them. I guess it is," he admitted, his voice hesitant but honest. Emma's hand instinctively brushed her hair back, a nervous gesture, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. Ryan's gaze held hers, calm, unwavering. And she felt seen in a way that startled her. Ryan stepped a little closer, closing the gap, but not in a threatening way. He simply stood there, his presence grounding, making her heart race and calm at the same time. "I trust you both," he said quietly, a pause hanging in the air before he continued. "And maybe, instead of fighting it, we figure it out together." Emma's eyes widened. She had expected anger, jealousy, something explosive, but this was nothing she could have imagined. Her husband, the man she had loved and known for years, was offering understanding, offering space for them to explore this tension without shame or anger. She felt a mix of relief and fear, excitement and disbelief all at once. Alex let out a small laugh, nervous but relieved. I didn't think this could happen," he said, shaking his head slightly. Emma could feel the electricity in the room, the quiet energy of emotions finally allowed to surface. It was charged but not overwhelming, intimate but not invasive. Ryan's voice was soft now, almost a whisper. "We don't have to rush anything," he said. "We just start by being honest. That's all I ask." Emma nodded, her throat tight, emotions swirling. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, but instead of crushing her, it made her feel awake, aware of every heartbeat, every breath. For the first time that day, she let herself breathe. She glanced at Alex, who was watching her, and felt a flicker of hope. This wasn't about betrayal. Not really. It was about understanding, about facing emotions that had been ignored for too long. Ryan's calm acceptance made it possible to imagine a different way forward. One that didn't involve conflict, but rather honesty and openness. Ryan moved to stand behind Emma, his hands resting lightly on the counter, just close enough to make her aware of his presence. "I know this isn't easy," he said quietly, "but we're all here because we care. That's important. That's everything." Emma's chest swelled. Care, love, trust, these words carried more weight than anything else in the room. She realized that this moment wasn't about temptation or betrayal, it was about connection, about acknowledging feelings without judgment, about letting their hearts speak even when it was complicated. Alex shifted again, his nervousness giving way to a tentative smile. I don't want to cause problems," he said softly. "I just want things to be okay." Ryan's smile widened, slightly reassuring, steady. "We can make it okay," he said. "It won't be simple. Nothing worth feeling always is. But we can try. Together." Emma felt a tear prick at the corner of her eye, the kind that comes from relief, from finally being understood, from realizing that love doesn't always fit into neat boxes. Sometimes it grows in ways you can't predict, shapes you can't control, but when it's real, it finds a way to expand without breaking. The three of them moved to the living room. The atmosphere still charged, but now softer, more intimate in its calm. They sat on the couch, tea in hand, but the conversation wasn't about the tea anymore. It was about them, about feelings they hadn't dared to voice, about boundaries and trust and curiosity. Emma realized that every glance, every small gesture, every careful word was a step towards something new. Something fragile but promising. Ryan reached over and took her hand gently, just enough to ground her without overwhelming. "We'll take it slow," he said softly. "One step at a time. No pressure, no judgment." Emma nodded, her heart pounding with gratitude and awe. The tension that had threatened to ruin everything had transformed into something entirely unexpected, a chance to be honest, a chance to explore emotions they had buried, a chance to grow closer rather than drift apart. Alex smiled, a flicker of hope in his eyes, as if realizing that the impossible could in fact exist. I can do that," he said quietly. "I can be honest. We all can." And in that moment, Emma felt a surge of emotion that left her almost breathless. The room was quiet except for the soft clink of teacups, but beneath the calm, there was a new energy, of fragile, shimmering thread of connection that promised understanding, intimacy, and trust. She realized that love could be many things at once, comforting and exciting, simple and complex, familiar and new. Ryan's hand still rested lightly on hers, his presence steady, a reminder that this wasn't about fear or anger. It was about honesty, acceptance, and the courage to face emotions together. Emma's heart swelled with gratitude and wonder. Perhaps love wasn't just about possession or protection. It was about openness, about allowing space for feelings, about trusting one another even when life got complicated. As the afternoon sun poured through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room, Emma leaned back slightly, letting herself absorb the moment. It was delicate, it was new, and it was real. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe freely, like the weight of unspoken emotions had finally lifted just enough to make room for hope. And deep down, she knew that this was only the beginning. The next steps would be uncertain, maybe even challenging, but they would be taken together. Ryan, Alex, and she, three hearts navigating something unexpected, something delicate, something real. And for Emma, that was more than enough to make her believe that love could indeed take surprising, beautiful forms. If you want, I can now expand part 3 in the same style, giving a satisfying emotional and romantic conclusion while keeping it fully safe for YouTube. Do you want me to do that next? Here's an expanded, fast-paced, emotionally rich version of part 3, written in a single flowing narrative, fully safe for YouTube monetization, simple English. Around 1,000 words, the room felt lighter now, as if a heavy curtain had been lifted, leaving space for something new to emerge. Emma could feel her heart beating in a different rhythm, one that combined relief, excitement, and a quiet joy she hadn't experienced in years. She glanced at Ryan, who was sitting on the edge of the couch, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert, thoughtful. There was no anger in him, no judgment, only presence, a steady calm that somehow made everything seem possible. Alex sat opposite her, holding his tea, still a little nervous but more comfortable than before. The tension that had filled the room earlier had transformed into something unspoken yet tangible, mutual understanding that allowed them to breathe. Emma realized that the room was no longer just a kitchen or a living room. It had become a place of honesty, of trust, where emotions could finally be spoken without fear. Ryan broke the silence first, his voice quiet but firm. "I've been thinking a lot about this," he said, looking at Emma and Alex in turn, "about how feelings work and how relationships work. I know it's not simple, and I know it won't always be easy, but I also know that we care about each other, all three of us. That's what matters." Emma's chest swelled with emotion. Care. That one word carried more weight than anything else. She nodded, her fingers tightening around her teacup. I never wanted to hurt anyone," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Not you, not Alex, not myself." Ryan reached over and placed a hand gently on hers, a grounding touch that made her feel safe. "I know," he said simply, "and you haven't. What matters now is how we move forward, honestly and openly." His words had a clarity that cut through the confusion and fear she had felt earlier. Alex let out a small laugh, nervous but genuine. I don't know what I expected, he admitted, looking between them. Maybe yelling, maybe awkward silence, maybe, I don't know, a disaster, but this. This is better than anything I imagined. Emma smiled faintly, a tear threatening to spill. Better than a disaster, huh? She whispered, almost to herself. She had spent so long fearing conflict, imagining the worst-case scenarios, that she hadn't allowed herself to consider a peaceful, understanding outcome. But here it was, unfolding in front of her. Fragile, yet real. Ryan nodded. We've been given a chance to be honest, he said, his voice steady. To talk about what we feel, to understand each other, and to make decisions together. That's rare. That's valuable. And I want to protect that. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, letting the words sink in. The sunlight spilling through the windows created a warm glow that seemed to wrap around them, softening the edges of the uncertainty. Emma felt a flutter of hope she hadn't realized she was missing. The fear that had dominated her heart earlier had shifted into curiosity, into a willingness to explore what this new connection could mean. I don't want to ruin anything between us, Alex said finally, breaking the silence. I care about both of you, and I don't want things to be awkward or forced. Emma reached across the small distance to touch his hand lightly. It won't be, she said softly. We just have to keep being honest, keep talking, and keep trusting each other. That's all. Ryan smiled, a slow, reassuring smile that made her heart ache in the best possible way. Exactly. We don't have to figure everything out today, he said. Step by step, we'll understand how this works. But for now, we just start by being open, by being present, by caring for each other without fear. Emma felt tears prickle at her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of a deep recognition that love could take many forms and still be real and strong. She realized that this moment, this calm, honest, quiet space was a gift, a chance to experience connection in its purest form. Alex's shoulders relaxed, and he let out a contented sigh. I think I can do this, he said quietly. I can be honest. I can be patient. I can care. Emma felt a surge of emotion so strong it made her catch her breath. The room was still, but it wasn't empty. It was full of possibilities, full of feelings that had been buried under fear, under expectation, under the pressure of what love should look like. Now, it could just be what it was, simple, honest, real. Ryan leaned back slightly, letting his hand rest gently over hers. We'll take it slow, he said again, reinforcing the promise he had made earlier. No rushing, no pressure, just us figuring things out together. And that's enough. Emma's heart swelled. Enough. That single word carried more meaning than she could put into words. Enough meant love. Enough meant trust. Enough meant hope. She had feared that the day's events would unravel everything. But instead they had opened the door to a deeper connection, one that was surprising, delicate, and full of potential as the afternoon stretched into early evening. The three of them continued to talk, laughing softly, sharing stories, and rediscovering the bond that had been complicated by unspoken feelings. Every glance, every gesture, every careful word strengthened the fragile thread that connected them. Emma realized that this wasn't about tension or guilt. It was about understanding, about exploring emotions honestly and respectfully, about embracing complexity without fear. Ryan's presence was calming, steady, and surprisingly comforting. He didn't dominate the conversation. He listened, observed, and spoke with intention. Emma felt her love for him deepen in a new way. A love built not just on years of shared history, but on trust and openness, on the courage to face complicated emotions together. Alex's presence added a spark, a reminder that connections could be multidimensional and that emotions could coexist without tearing people apart. Emma felt grateful for him, for Ryan, and for herself, for allowing her heart to feel deeply, openly, and without shame. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the room. Emma leaned back slightly, her head resting lightly against the couch, feeling the warmth of both men's presence. For the first time in a long while, she felt completely understood. She realized that love wasn't always about clear lines or simple rules. Sometimes it was about honesty, care, and the willingness to navigate uncertainty together. Ryan's hand remained over hers, a constant, reassuring touch. "Whatever happens next," he said softly, "we face it together. That's the most important thing." Emma nodded, tears sliding quietly down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the profound sense of relief and gratitude she felt. Alex smiled gently, squeezing her hand in return. It was a silent promise, a pact of understanding, a mutual recognition that they could move forward without fear or judgment. As evening settled in, the three of them sat together, quiet but connected, savoring the fragile beauty of the moment. Emma realized that this was what love could be at its best: patient, honest, compassionate, and unafraid to embrace complexity. She felt a deep sense of peace and anticipation, knowing that the next chapter of their lives would be challenging but full of possibilities, full of connection, full of care, and in that quiet, warm room, with the golden light of the setting sun streaming through the windows, Emma understood something important. Love wasn't about control or certainty or following rules. Love was about trust, understanding, and the courage to open your heart even when the path was unclear. For the first time in a long time, she smiled through her tears. She felt alive, fully seen, and ready to face whatever came next with Ryan, with Alex, and with the unexpected, beautiful possibilities that lay ahead. The chapter had closed on fear and tension, and a new one was beginning, a chapter full of hope, connection, and the quiet, steady power of love that embraced all its forms. And for Emma, that was more than she had ever dared to imagine. If you want, I can now create 5 YouTube-optimized titles and 5 clickable thumbnail texts, specifically for this story to maximize engagement and click-through rates. Do you want me to do that next?